everyone. Welcome to The Composer's Life. I'm Nadia, your host, and today is the second part of an interview with Blair Mowat, a composer for TV and film. We're going to just jump right in where we left off in the last episode, speaking to Blair about his processes when composing. This is kind of a two-part question. When you're getting lost and you're in the midst of working on something, how do you keep your creativity going? How do you not get stuck? And then the second part I wanted to ask is, in between projects, what do you do to avoid burnout so that you can be ready for your next project?
I think I'm very lucky with sort of the creativity aspect. I don't really get like writer's block very often. I suppose the way that I'd say to solve that is just come up with really good source material for you to draw from early on. So I will have, if I know I'm on a project very early on, I might have a few weeks where I'm trying to come up with what I think is the right material to draw from, the right melody, the right theme for a character, and that can it's just time, really. Like, you go and you see if you can find it. Sometimes you find it in 10 minutes, sometimes you find it in 2 weeks. Like, it really, the musical gods sort of give whenever they want, and sometimes it just lands into your head or onto your fingers when you're playing on the keyboard. But I think you just need to give yourself as much time to set up your melodies, but then also think about your instrumentation, think about your orchestration, find some cool new textures, think about cool new combinations of instruments. So when I was doing the score for Nolly, which was a British show written by Russell T Davies, that I did sort of a year ago or so, I ended up, for her melody with the piano, often mixing it with soft vibes. And so instead of it just being a piano, it was very often doubled with these soft vibes that would give this cool. It didn't just sound like a piano anymore. It sounded like something new because of the colors combining. And just something as small as that can then make elements of the score more distinctive. And once I sort of came across that, I was like, wow, I really like this combination. It's then used all over the place, and it helps just bring you into a musical world which is unique to that particular project. So I would say trying different combinations, loading up different. If you were doing like an electronic project, you would try and create your own synth patches and create a whole 50 different patches of cool stuff that then you can use in the project, which is unique to you. And then once you've got your themes and your melodies, and you've sorted out your musical palette of instrumentation, really it's all a theme and variation on those things. So you just keep trying different combinations until you come across it and solve it. And then if you're in doubt, then speak to your director, and kind of talk through the scene, or maybe send a sketch and say, I know this isn't quite working, but I can't quite figure out why. Do you have any ideas? Because that's really nice to involve them in the actual process as well, and say, how do we solve this problem? Because I'm a little bit stuck. And it's okay to say if you're stuck. It's not something that I end up doing very often, but there should be no shame in involving your collaborators. They want to be involved. And then when it comes to burnout, I think you just literally need to take time doing something physically different than what you were doing. So if you are sitting in a chair for many, many hours a day, you need to go and be walking and meeting people sitting in different chairs, getting up from the chair to go. It's just moving your body, and then also going on experiences like going on holidays. So I was lucky enough to go to Mexico early in the year. I've got a cool trip coming up, which in Africa, which I'm really excited to go and be inspired by that environment, somewhere that I've never really been before. And I think you need to sort of fill up your cultural well by watching lots of other projects, listening to lots of other music. And usually when you come back at something, you will come back at it with a fresh take, when you take that time away. But you also need to be careful with your health as you're working on the project. I think nothing is really more important than your health, because you can't really get your health. Well, I suppose you can get your health back in certain circumstances, but it should always be the priority. And if somebody has messed up their own deadline and are asking you to fix things in a short space of time, and you really think it's physically not possible, I don't think you should be afraid to say, well, you've got to pay me more money so I can maybe get some, some help on this, whether it's like an assistant or more money for orchestration or extra mixing. So you can kind of delegate some of those things yourself, or just walk away from it and say to them, like, literally, it's not physically possible. You're trying to put a square peg into a round hole, and they need to go back to the broadcaster and say, we messed up. Like, we need to work this out.
When you're networking with people and you have professional relationships to maintain and everything, how do you go about networking, I guess? And after you've networked with someone, how do you go about maintaining a professional relationship with that person?
Yeah, I think it's so contextual as to how you sort of maintain your network of people. I think sometimes you just have to accept that even if that person would be very useful to work with, that sometimes the social chemistry just like isn't there, and you don't want to necessarily force that, because you want to be working with people that you get on with. And then there's certainly people that I've like blacklisted over the years who I'm like, and not very many, but just occasionally just be like, actually, I don't think I would work with that person again, because maybe they didn't treat you very well. Maybe they made the process very difficult. I think it's just about sort of you need to be organized about it, I think. And if you really do want to keep up with somebody, and it's about touching base with them in a kind of non-cloying, non-creepy way of giving them something interesting, like an interesting update, or if it is a very personal connection, then going for coffee, trying to get time with that person in person, if they have time to be able to meet you in person, following up with a connection if you've met somebody at like a networking event or something, like, trying to cement that after an appropriate amount of time, and getting more time in person. If they're not available in person, then jumping on a Zoom call. It's really easy to jump on like a 30-minute, like 45-minute Zoom call, rather than like going into Soho for a coffee and then having to come back and like taking up loads of time in the middle of your day. You can also meet people in other countries now through over Zoom. Like, it's totally possible. We're speaking at the moment in two completely different parts of the world. So I think the digitization of communication, especially post-COVID, and the openness to remote networking opens up a whole variety of stuff for you to be able to just have chats with people that are in completely different parts of the world. So but I do think it's about finding your people that you gel with, and finding people that you want to work with, making sure that you're networking with people whose like work you admire, and that you feel that you feel some sort of creative synergy with them, so that you're on the same page. I think networking is a hugely important part of it. And also, not being too perfectionist about it. If something doesn't work out, or somebody hasn't emailed you back or whatever, then just like move on. Like, there are definitely people that I need to email back who they're probably thinking like, oh, I mean, they're probably not thinking about it right now, but they might say, oh, well, like, if I emailed like again the second time, do I look needy? No, it's
Is
like
it
fine.
creepy?
Is it creepy? I think sending a second email is like totally acceptable, like, because people forget about stuff all the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe I can't believe I ignored that, or I forgot about it. And I think once you get to the third time, it's starting to get into the creepy territory. But if it's important to you, why not give it one more shot? And then if you still haven't had a reply from like the third time, then it's probably dead. Though not always, because it depends on the I have friends, I have both professional contacts, but also friends who are they're just useless at communication, and they're not very good at replying to certain things, and you shouldn't take it too personally, and it probably doesn't mean anything. But I think meeting people in person at festivals and events and stuff, I think that's always the best way. I've ended up meeting people in person who that relationship, professionally has just been so much stronger from having been in the same space and being connected through like a friend or something, or through being in the same room, having the purpose of being there, than if I'd like cold called them, and it wouldn't have had the same effect because a lot of other people are doing that. Being there in person puts you at such an advantage, and people are just nicer, I think, when they're in person because they can't get away with ignoring you. I mean, if they ignored you to your face, I mean, you think they were mad. But over email, it's so much easier to go, oh, I don't have time I can't do that. I will say that when people email me, like somebody emailed, I'm going to email him back. And sometimes people email saying, "Oh, huge fan of your music. Like I want to meet up and get advice from you." And you're like, okay, like, how do I know you didn't send this to 500 people and you're just seeing who replies? Because you've not said anything specifically about me. You've not shown me that you've thought about what our interaction would be like. You haven't really valued me as a person. You're just, yeah, you could easily just be sending this out to 500 people. So I then don't know if that person's just not thought a lot about how their emails are going to come across, and they genuinely are a huge fan of my work, and it would be a great deal to meet up with them and give them advice, because I do want to help people when I have downtime and when I can. But it's harder to justify doing that for when you think somebody's just trying it on and they've emailed 500, 600 people to see who's going to reply, and then you feel like a bit of a mug. And so to not make people feel like that when you email them, like, identify something about their stuff that you do love, like, big fan of your work, I particularly like this score, and I also really love this one, and I found this one really interesting because of XY, Z, etc. And that will just like make such a huge difference. Like, somebody emailed me the other day about using my music on a radio program in Scandinavia, and it was just a really nice, polite, respectful email, very specific as to like what they wanted and how I could help them. And I just immediately put together the music that they needed in like a sort of suite format and just sent it across, because they were so clear in what they wanted out of that interaction. I was very happy to do it. Sometimes people will say, oh, like, maybe I could send you some of my work so that you can like find out more about me. And I'm like, maybe you could have sent it in this email so I don't have to ask you for your work. Cause like, I'm super stressed and super busy, like, working on these projects, like 12, 14 hours a day. And I don't want a pen pal. If you want something from me, just like, just tell me up front. So yeah, I think if you're going to tell somebody, if you're going to email somebody and you genuinely want to meet them and you're not doing the whole like mass cold calling thing, which I wouldn't recommend anyway, if you want to say something about yourself, include it in the email and say, hey, here's some of my music. This is a little bit about me. Or if you're interested in more about me, then here's a little biog attached, which has a bit more information about me. Or like, here's my website. Don't make me come to have to ask you for extra information that you're like hiding from me, because like that's just mad to me. It's just bad networking. It's bad email practice, and it's not valuing the other person's time because you're holding something back from them. And it's actually really maybe useful to be able to click on somebody's music and have a listen to it, and immediately you could get a sense of like, oh wow, this person's great. Like, maybe this person, could be like a potential assistant, or, I might know somebody that I could introduce this person to who's looking for an assistant, or even like somebody who's looking for like a composer for a short film because they're particularly good at a certain style. Like, get into the specifics and be concise, but give enough detail, so that it doesn't just come across as this like generic email. But being able to email and communicate really well, having like an intelligent response to things, not being like emotional about stuff. Like, if somebody doesn't like your music, like, it's a client relationship. Like, you can argue intellectually why you think something should be a certain way, but at the end of the day, like, you have to be like respectful to them. And they're the people who are paying you. They've asked you to do something for them. And I know some artists can be very, sometimes they're like, well, it's that or nothing. Like, I'm an artist, take it or leave it. But I think, if you want to have a long and successful career, then that's this isn't the industry. Like, for you to do that, you should go off and write concert music or something, because this is a collaborative process where sometimes you're not going to 100% agree with people, and communication skills, being able to communicate effectively and in a nice manner, is super important. People want to work with people that they enjoy working with. So you do have to be good with people, and that's the case for a lot of jobs. I think the Venn diagram for composing is really large. There's all these different things that you need to be good at. You need to be good. You almost need to be a psychologist, because when you're going through like a director with the process of like them working on their film, they're going to go through moments of like self-doubt, and they're going to be getting notes from other people who's going to be like upsetting them and making them think certain things, that maybe we should take things this direction. And like, it's kind of your job to like almost be their therapist, like, I think in some ways, and in terms of just like being there for them as like a sounding board, and being like really supportive of them, like, and not seeing them as like an antagonist to like you doing your job and making like great sounding beautiful music. That's not what it's about. You're there to like support them and help them and just make the film the best that it possibly can be. Just don't get angry about the constraints that are there. I mean, sometimes you can't help it, but don't show don't show that frustration, or show it in the least possible way.
When you said that you almost have to be a psychologist, I even just thought of the way that you have to like analyze what you're watching to compose as well. I mean, you have to pick up on things too, but yeah, it makes sense.
I think the best composers effectively like can also self-direct, because a lot of directors will not have a lot of experience working with a composer, because they may have done some short films, maybe they've done like some episodes of television, but they will have only gone through that process maybe like in the start of their career, maybe like 5, like 6, like 7 times. Like, even experienced directors, they're on a whole project for like sometimes for like half a year, or like 3/4 of a year. So only you get to that chance to work with one composer doing one way of doing it. And so it's good if you can come in and you've got an opinion on where you think the music should go, and what the music should do emotionally, and you have questions for them and you can guide them through the process. I don't think the director should always be guiding you. I
Hmm.
think it's completely okay either way. Like, if the director's very confident about what they want to do, and you should respect that. But if they're like, hey, like, I'm not sure about this, like, what do you think? Like you say, you have to have an opinion on the scene, on the performance, on the narrative, how this ties into everything else in the show, how it ties into other cues that you've composed. Like, oh, hey, we can use like the same melody here, but we can like do it in this style because like they're in a jazz bar or something. And let's make it kind of jazzy. Or like we could add some subtext, and like, these characters are like smiling at each other, but actually we know that this woman kind of hates this woman because we find that later on. So maybe we can like put something a little kind of darker and like edgier here, and kind of preempt that in some way, or maybe we don't want to preempt that. I don't know, but things like subtext, I think, are incredibly important. And if you know the script well, if you understand what's going on, then you can do things musically that aren't there in the performances or like on screen, and then you're adding another layer, making it kind of multi-dimensional, and that creates sophistication. And I think sophisticated dramas are the ones that tend to be regarded as the best. It doesn't mean that you should always be scoring against the scene, but I think you've always got to be asking yourself the question, like, what can I add here that isn't already here? And maybe it's something that was meant to be there. Maybe the actor had a really tough day and got some bad news, and they just didn't manage to deliver the performance that the director wanted. And then you're like, okay, well, how do we get you there to that point where you're happy with this performance? Like, maybe we need to write some like really emotional music, or maybe it
Hmm.
needs to be really sparse and stark because they kind of overacted, and we can completely change the way that the scene feels through using that music. And I think it's useful for you to have an opinion as a composer. As long as it's not offensive, you've got to be tactful about what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. I, speaking of, humanizing people, I think when you were talking about how directors might not have actually worked with composers, even experienced directors, that often is a really interesting point. Like that kind of humanizes directors for me
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
really
yeah.
good point actually. And I've loved working with students because they don't really know what they want in their films, and it's really interesting to ask so many questions to figure out what they're trying to say, behind certain scenes and the story of the film and everything. So I think that's a really great point as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you need to make them like feel okay that it's, it is okay if they don't know like what they want to do in a particular scene. You don't want to make them feel like they're walking into some kind of trap or something if they don't have the right answer. Like there is no right answer or wrong answer. I came up with the analogy of ice cream the other day where like you and a bunch of exec producers walk into an ice cream parlor and you can only choose one flavor of ice cream, guys. Everyone has different tastes. Everyone's going to have an opinion on like what the ice cream is going to be. And what ultimately will usually happen is that everybody will have a little bit of each ice cream and they're going to put it in one cup and it's all going to melt together and it's going to be a generic compromising slush that doesn't taste good at all because too many cooks have spoiled the broth. Whereas what you really need is somebody who has power in that situation to say, hey, like, what ice cream do you guys think we should go for? I'm going to take a bit of a poll. And they would then do that separately from you as the person who has to buy the ice cream. And they're going to say, well, most people think we should maybe go for this particular ice cream flavor. I'm going to make the executive decision. It should be this one. And maybe we'll do a split scoop and we'll have like two flavors, of the one scoop. But we're not going to make a big mush compromising thing that's going to keep everyone happy. Some people are going to be a little bit disappointed. But you know what? They'll get over it. They can go to another ice cream parlor another day, and they can get rum and raisin then. It's fine. So yeah, I think that's the kind of way to do it rather than just having this compromise that keeps everyone happy. Because if every single person is happy, you've probably made something real. If you're working on a large project, then you've probably made something that's kind of mundane and a bit boring. Unless, and it's not always the case, if everyone agrees to begin with, then that's fine. But if there's a lot of disagreement and people think that they're making a different project, then that is a lot trickier to navigate. And there's only so much you can do as a composer in that scenario, apart from just try and work with people who have worked out how to do that process well and how to keep making interesting, unique drama, documentary, whatever it is that you're
Mm.
working on.
I can imagine as well that it's so much more rewarding after it's finished when you've
Mm.
actually taken the time to collaborate like with the people making the film rather than just saying yes or whatever. When it's actually a collaboration, it's got to be so much more rewarding to watch the end result with that
Yeah.
person, having gone
Yeah,
through it
definitely.
together.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the more that you can do, from my experience, the more that you can do early on in that scenario, the better that it is going to be, because you can give them ownership together with yourself over the direction of the music that you're taking, because you've taken the time to have those conversations with them and allow them to have input on things like style, or like sending them a melody and being like, hey, does this feel like it would be good for like this character, or like, to these opening titles, like, just wanted to check in with you, just make sure that they like it, and then you can go ahead and then you can create more stuff out of that, and find out what it is they like about it. Do they like a particular thing? Like, oh, I just love the tempo. I love how pacey it is. Like, oh, great. Well, this person likes pacey stuff. So, let's get some more material and then send it to the edit so they can start cutting with it, and let's make everything a bit pacey. Yeah, that, just keep that conversation going and just involve them, and because they should be involved, and it makes to a better score, it makes to a happier relationship. Don't just like be insular and hide everything and then hand it over at the last minute, unless you have to, because I mean sometimes it's such a short period of time that people might agree, like, okay, well, whatever you give me is what I'm going to get, because I only have this amount of budget, I only have this amount of time, this is crazy. To have any music would be a miracle at all, so you're good at what you do. I hired you because you're a professional. Go do your thing. That happens too.
What advice would you give yourself if you were to go back in time starting out with film scoring?
Oh man, that's a tricky one. I think I would have advised myself to go and work for another composer sooner in my career. Go and become an assistant to another composer who is working on the type of things that you would want to work on, and maybe spend like a year or two doing that earlier on, because I think it would have given me a lot of information, valuable experiences, just to kind of fill in some of the gaps of the administrative stuff around producing a film score, like, you know, things like spreadsheets and things that you need to keep on top of whilst you're doing this kind of stuff. And I got given some advice by somebody who said that they got a 9 to 5 job and they really regret that, because then they were tired and they couldn't work on their stuff in the evenings, and that, you know, you should just go out and be poor and just try and every day just do everything you can towards making it happen. And that's kind of what I did, but I found that really tough and kind of depressing and really brutal. And I kind of wish that I'd done a little bit more on the side just to keep myself afloat financially, because it had like definitely had an impact on like my mental health. I was just deeply unhappy for quite a period of time trying to do that, and I think I was quite unkind to myself, just working all the time and barely making money on the things I was working for. And I think sometimes it's okay if the journey takes a little bit longer to get there. Just like look after yourself, look after your health, like spend time with your friends, make sure you're doing a fun thing once in a while. There's more to life than just getting there as fast as possible. It's fine once you get there, like because you can be like, yay, great, like, you know, I'm constantly being like offered work, I'm working on things I'm passionate about, I'm being paid like properly. That's great, but like, whew, I wouldn't want to travel back in time 10 years to where I was and have to do it all over again. So, and then one thing I think is a really good piece of advice is just like stop copying like Hans Zimmer in terms of the tracks that people send people, because I will come across like trailer music type stuff which is clearly inspired by a lot of, you know, sort of Zimmer-esque scores, and there's a lot of people out there doing that kind of stuff, but just at a kind of lesser production value of what, of course, you know, the Hans is doing himself. And like, it's just a like bunch of like photocopies of a photocopy. How are you going to break through? How's anyone ever going to hire you? Because like for actually writing music, bespoke music to film and TV, because there are loads of people who can do what that person is doing way better. Like people who worked with Hans at remote control over the years, who have their own unique voices, but also are clearly influenced by him as well, who can do that kind of score if somebody wants to get them. And I'm sorry, but like Paramount, Universal, they are not going to come to somebody who hasn't had experience before who can do that, when there is an army of people who've got loads of experience, who they know personally and have worked with before, who can absolutely do that style of music. So I would say to people to try and find a way of finding their own voice and doing something interesting, something unique, because I see so much of that kind of stuff, and I just wonder whether there's any point in, you know, moving forward. I almost kind of want to say to people, like, you just got to think about it a different way. Like, if this is like a hobby and you just want to sound like Zimmer for like a hobby, then great. But like, you've done it. You've done it. Here's a badge. Like, go off and you can do whatever else you want for a different career. But I don't think if you're like in your the very beginning stages of your career, then showing that you can do that, I don't know how much use that is, because I just see so much of it. And I think,
You just need to find your own special sound or voice to it.
yeah, it just shows a lack of imagination, I think, which is Yeah, I think you need imagination to do this job well. And listen, don't get me wrong, you could find tracks and you could point out like, "Hey Blair, that sounds kind of Zimmery. Like, you're a hypocrite." And I'm like, "Okay, I hold my hands up. Like he's great." And it ends up in a lot of temp scores. He's very influential. There's a reason that editors use it all the time to work with, like because of like the kind of the strict meter, and it edits very well to picture. So it is going to end up in temp scores, and some of the stuff just works really well, and that's okay. It's absolutely fine to have bits of your oeuvre which are a little bit influenced by something, especially when you're doing a client job where they want a particular type of thing that is in vogue. It's okay. But if you're at the beginning of your career and you can take as many risks as you want, nobody's making you copy a temp score, nobody's pushing you in a certain direction. You could go any way that you want to go. Try and find a way of doing something which is a bit different, that is going to stand out, because that's the only way that you're really going to kind of break through. Or at least have something which is like got some emotion to it. But I just hear these kind of like bad MIDI sampled action music stuff that where I don't know. There's so much of it. There's so much of it, and it's just getting mad now because it's been like over 10 years of it, and people doing the same type of stuff. And I guess you could maybe have a career in doing trailer music or library music, maybe doing that, and like there's absolutely no shame in that. Like that's a perfectly great career path if that's kind of what you want to do. So maybe I'm being a little bit harsh in terms of like that there's no use for it, because I think maybe for some people there could be, but I'm probably not gonna get you involved in my stuff or jump to like have a coffee with somebody. Yeah.
You're speaking to like getting hired as a composer for
Yeah.
film
Yeah.
specifically, I
Yeah.
feel.
It's and it's because it's also not done like to as good a standard as that stuff. So like that's what I'm saying. Like if it was really truly up in the same production values, the same musical quality as some of like Zimmer's best work, then you'd be like, oh, do you know what? Like even if it's not for me, I feel like I need to send you over to like remote control or something to go work with those guys, because they could definitely make use of you. But often it just feels like I say, it's like a photocopy of a photocopy. It's not. It doesn't feel like it's of high quality as the original. So that's the other caveat that I would say. If you're really truly good at doing that, then obviously there is a market for it. If it's at a certain level of quality. But if you are still at the start of your career and you're still learning your skill set, then people will have a lot more patience and a lot more interest in exploring your music if it's just something which is a bit unique and a bit different. So stop listening to Zimmer. Go and listen to some non-film score music. Go and listen to some concert works. Go listen to some other genres. Like, how could you bring those into your music and do something which is like really quirky and really cool that hasn't been like done before?
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about today?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love people to go and check out Nolly, which we talked about earlier, because that's a score. I mean, working with Russell T Davies, who was just, I had so much admiration for him as a writer before I went into that project, and I had met him a few times over the years. Getting a chance to work on something which I just think it's just incredibly written. It's a beautiful piece of drama. Helena Bonham Carter is the main star. Peter Hoare, our wonderful director, who won a BAFTA for It's a Sin. He just won a Directors Guild Award for The Last of Us, as well. Just super talented team that made what I think is a great piece of television. So, and I'm just really happy with how the music turned out on that. I was able to kind of do what I wanted. I was given quite a lot of free reign to go and explore and come up with something that I felt was kind of interesting. We had this kind of toy band element to the score with all these cool quirky instruments like melodica and like snare drum and like clapping and finger clicks and like putting your hands together, like kind of almost kind of scratching them to make kind of cool rhythmic noises. And then we've got this very lush, like old school, like Hollywood musical theater, nostalgic feel, which feels very appropriate because it's kind of set in the past and it's a bit of a period piece. So I would, get people to check out the score on Spotify or, Apple Music or everywhere else that it is, because it's something that I'm really proud of that's quite recent. And then Dr. Jekyll is something else, which is very different, which is more of a kind of throwback to the old Hammer horror films, because this was a new Hammer horror film starring Eddie Izzard as Dr. Jekyll. And that's more influenced by like old school scores like James Bernard, who did the Hammer horror films. There's bits of Danny Elfman, bits of John Williams. Like, I feel like a lot of film composers my age are a kind of conglomeration of some of the great 20th century film scorers, because of course they're kind of the mishmash of those people kind of create some of our musical voices. And sometimes in certain projects you get to kind of draw on that kind of intricate orchestral writing that we don't really get a chance to do for film and TV very often, whether it's to do with budget or whether it's to do with the style of the show not really warranting something that's so like big and lush and gothic. But that was a really fun project to work on. So that's available now to download digitally, I think, through most services. And I know there's going to be a Blu-ray in the near future, but the score is also up on Spotify as well. So I'll give that a plug. And then finally, there is a film coming out later this year called Black Dog, which we premiered at the BFI London Film Festival. And we also just had the Scottish premiere at the Glasgow Film Festival, which I managed to go and see on the screen, which was really good fun. And that's by a really talented director called George Jakes, who I did a bunch of short films for. And this is his first debut feature film. And I just think it's a really touching, really well made movie, very emotional, about two boys going on a road trip from London to Scotland, and they both have their own demons and internal struggles. And I think it's just a beautiful piece of drama. I got to do some great music for it. George was great to work with, and I think that's going to be coming out some point later this year. So if people watch out for Black Dog, then it's going to have a theatrical release in cinemas. And I would love people to go and support independent cinema and see it in the cinema when it comes out. So have a look for that when it comes out.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. For everyone listening, all of Blair's information, including his website and music, is linked in the episode notes. Make sure to especially check out the score for Nolly, which has been nominated for a BAFTA.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great to have this conversation, and yeah, absolutely happy to come back on any other time. And good luck with all your future guests.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on as well. And thank you to everyone who's listening right now. We hope that you enjoyed this interview and got a lot out of it. And I will see you next time on The Composer's Life.